Second.
Ms. Kalinowski, have a roll, please.
Ms. Kohler?
Yes.
Ms. Kalinowski?
Yes.
Mr. Newmoff?
Yes.
Mr. Darrow?
Yes.
President McClellan?
Yes. We have 3 discussion items for tonight, and I will turn it over to Mr. Sawyers.
Thank you. So our first discussion item this evening, First discussion item this evening is the reconfiguration study update. As the Board of Education is aware, we posted 6 public sessions in the last 2 days. We've had approximately 145 participants from our parent school community that actually came to the 6 sessions to learn more about the reconfiguration study. We'd like to do an update for you this evening for the purposes both for you, but also for the public through the internet for taping of the meeting if you weren't able to come to one of the previous sessions, to basically share the additional information known today. I'd like to start for board purposes to recalling the why behind the reconfiguration study, and it's really the focus of the responsibility that you charged to me as the new superintendent of the school district in August, that it's your expectation as well as the expectation of the community that we demonstrate effective and efficient usage of our resources to increase academic achievement and meet the developmental outcomes of kids. So in that context, we actually had a conversation about the use of physical space within our structure of our school district, because doing more of the same could lead us to the same result. So we're trying to figure out what else could we do that further enhances our ability to meet the educational, academic achievement and developmental needs of kids. 2 years ago within the school district, we did an extensive survey with our families related to early childhood education. There was significant interest within our school community to continue to expand early learning opportunities for students that are preschool age and or kindergarten age, and we focused on all-day kindergarten at the time. 2 years ago, we had 2, after we did the whole process, so 2 school years ago, we actually implemented last year the all-day K kindergarten process as a result of that work with the families. We opened 2 all-day K classrooms and then ultimately left everyone else through the lottery process, did not get all-day kindergarten. So based upon the continued demand for registration this year for the 16-17 school year, we had 177 students in families register during the kindergarten registration process, indicating that they would like all-day kindergarten. Based upon the physical space at our K-1 building, we went from 2 all-day Ks to 3. Every physical regular classroom at the K-1 elementary school is being used for kindergarten or first grade. There's one related arts room next to the media center that has music in it part of the day as a special. I have no empty classrooms. So of the 177 kids on a list for the lottery that wanted all-day K, 66 were placed. So all the other students that want all-day kindergarten as a result of the community demand, and it's tuition-based, could not get it because they physically don't have space. There's a significant research benefit behind early learning and the benefits for what it does longitudinally for meeting the academic and developmental needs of kids. The second prong in the space issue that we're trying to resolve is the continued feedback from families and students related to what happens in middle school. Our physical middle school building is not big enough to house the current number of students enrolled in grades 6, 7, and 8, and will never be for the foreseeable future of the next decade. 250 students are currently in the 2-8 learning facility because it was built as flexible space. So looking towards the future in our conversations, we've been having conversations about the academic impact of what that means and what else we could do to further benefit students in their learning experiences on our school campus. This all ties to the foundation of the work that we've done in the school district with the commitment to excellence and the continuous improvement plan. You will recall that we have publicly stated that we aspire and will achieve by 2021 to become in the top 5% of the 608 public school districts in the state of Ohio. Today, we're ranked number 64. We need to be number 30 or higher by 2021. In this year's CIP, we put in a 2% goal lift. I've shared with you in our conversations in the development of the benchmarks and the indicators related to the continuous improvement plan that as we move forward in the future, it's going to get harder. We all recognize that. The higher you climb, the harder it is. I need to put new systems and structures in place for the future that give us greater opportunity to further meet the academic and developmental needs of kids. That's why we're having this space conversation. There's a direct academic benefit for looking at reconfiguration because I holistically believe in all the work that we have done, I will be able to increase academic instructional time for students on a daily basis. That's what I'm after. I want more instructional time to directly benefit kids. And to do that, I need to use our spaces a little bit differently and talk about how we bring kids to and from school. We created the benchmarks. I'm not going to go through them all, but you know the first 4 are directly related to student achievement. Number 5 was culture and social and emotional well-being, talking about the developmental programs we have for kids. And then 6 was fiscal management for sustainability for our future and a balanced 5-year forecast. And again, your charge, demonstrate you're going to use our resources efficiently and effectively. We want the maximum outcomes possible, both academically and developmentally, to meet the needs of our children. And we've done that within a balanced 5-year forecast that you adopted in October. And you'll adopt again in May of this current year. Last is ensure community engagement, stakeholder satisfaction, and we're excited tonight because we're actually going to share some of that with you. The parent satisfaction survey related to communications, as well as the Gallup survey for students, will be presented publicly this evening for your information, and as well our community. So again, recalling, we started with what grade level configurations maximize our existing space to, again, increase the academic achievement and or developmental outcomes of kids for the next 10 years. We've engaged the entire stakeholder community, from faculty to staff to parents, guardians, kids, and the community members, in conversations to talk about what are all the possibilities. We've done an extensive amount of research related to the administrative team, case studies, different things that we've looked at to try to understand what our options can become, as well as conducted a teacher survey. We have approximately 312 teachers in our school district. 206 of them responded to a teacher survey. I will tell you, dominantly, the teachers that did not respond are high school. And they're saying, I'm a high school biology teacher as an example. Why do I want to talk about preschool? So the teachers that did not respond dominantly are high school, because our questions were really geared to what we're doing in grades kindergarten through 8th or pre-K through 8. So we respect that. There were 206 respondents, however, from middle school and elementary teachers. Very diverse opinions and thoughts. In our configuration question, we actually gave them an open-ended text box and said, if we gave you the magic wand and you could create the configurations, what's in the best interest of our kids? There were 106 different types of configurations offered by teachers. Those 106 joined the 90 plus that the leadership team members came up with. So we had all kinds of possibilities that then went to the research opportunity to try to figure out what works, what doesn't work, and how do we go through this process. I'm going to pause because I'd like Dr. Troyer to come and share with you. That's the teacher perspective, the parent perspective. So tonight we're also sharing with you for the first time, our parent survey closed last Wednesday. So we're going to publicly share the results related to reconfiguration and what our parents believe within our school community. Dr. Troyer.
Thank you, Superintendent Sawyers. So our parent survey, we had 360 respondents. We felt pretty good about that. We would have liked more, as we always do, but 360 is really not bad for a survey on reconfiguration. 85% of those respondents agreed that some kind of redoing of our grade levels in the buildings is a good idea. And there were lots of questions, lots of topics that came up, and I will hit more of those in a little bit. One of the questions that we asked was the question about having all students in the same grade level in the same building. In other words, would it be beneficial for all third graders and all third grade teachers to be housed in the same building? And you can see that an overwhelming majority, over 86%, agreed that that would be beneficial. Another question we asked, because we had one of our principals, Mrs. LeBeau, who's assigned to the middle school, actually had to cover a whole building and part of another building this year. And when you're the principal, you need to be lots of places, and it's hard to be 2 places at once. And so it can be a challenge when we have a principal assigned to more than one building. And so we asked parents about that as well. And 88% or more agreed that it would be beneficial to have one principal to one building. Then we asked about all-day kindergarten. as Michael mentioned a little bit ago, we've been offering half-day kindergarten programs as required by the state for a very long time. But last year and this year, we also made all-day programs available on a tuition basis. And we were not able to meet all the demand for that. We had more families that wanted all-day kindergarten than we could make available based on our space constraints. And so we asked, we wanted to get a sense for what the feeling is about that in the community. And over 65% agreed that yes, it would be beneficial to have more all-day kindergarten spots available for our students. When we went to preschool, we found that there was some misunderstanding in the community about our preschool program, and I think that's reflected in these numbers. The question was, I believe, expanding tuition-based preschool opportunities would be beneficial for our students, and 55% said yes. Almost a fourth of them were completely undecided. And as we looked at the written responses in the open-ended questions, we found that a lot of people had a misconception about what we were talking about. So just to clarify, we have been running a preschool program in the district for many, many years. It's a federal requirement. A lot of community members aren't aware of that, but all students who have disabilities beginning at age 3, we need to serve them. So we always make an effort to try to find those children. They don't need to register for school yet, so sometimes we don't even know that they're there, but we make public announcement efforts to identify them. And then we're required to serve them from age 3 through 5 and then on into the regular school years. And in offering that preschool program, it's also a federal requirement that we have typically developing students in there as well, so that you don't have a preschool that's full of only students with disabilities. So the preschool program that we've been offering for many years has both students with disabilities who pay no tuition and students who are typically developing, and their families do pay a modest tuition for that preschool program. I want to point out that other preschool providers in the community are not under those same federal requirements. So in terms of serving students, young children ages 3 and 4 and 5 who have special needs, a commercially available program in the community would not be required to meet those same requirements. So a public school preschool program usually is a little bit different than one available otherwise. So just to recap, for the current school year, 2016-17, we have 8 sections of half-day preschool. They are in our 2-5 building. We don't have room in the K1 right now. It would probably make more sense to have them over there if there was space. We are offering the program both to typically developing peer students and students with special needs. We currently, and for many years, I think ever since the program was put in place long before I was here, have outsourced it to the Educational Service Center of Central Ohio. And back when the program was started, the district was very different than it is now. It was a very small rural district. And at that time, most small districts entered a consortium for their preschool programs and did it with the County Educational Service Center. And that's what's happened here, but it's also continued even as we've grown as a district. So even aside from the reconfiguration discussions, we've been talking for about the last 18 months about whether we want to take on that program ourselves now and run it ourselves rather than outsourcing it. So we have been doing some cost analyses and have determined that it would be cost neutral to bring that program in-house. And that way we would be able to control the curriculum, hire the staff, and so forth. So what we're proposing for next school year, 2017 and 18, is that we continue with our current program, but that we operate it ourselves. So employees would be New Albany School District employees, and we would be the ones who would determine the content and programming and curriculum for the preschool. We would continue with the half-day programs required in federal law for both students with disabilities and their peer model students. We have also are also giving consideration to possibly adding one additional section of all-day preschool. We don't know for sure how that would go. We'd like to try just one section for a year to see. It would be a pilot and a learning experience for us. We don't want to go broader than that. The first year that we take on the preschool operation ourselves, we'd like to keep it fairly limited in scope and fairly close to what we have already been doing with the Educational Service Center of Central Ohio. But this all-day preschool program would be an option for families. It would be tuition-based. And We don't know what the demand would be like. If there are more families that would like to access it, then we would have slots. Then we would need to determine how we would select who would actually be able to participate. With the kindergarten, all-day kindergarten, we did that with a lottery, so that might be a potential for the preschool as well. Then we went on and asked about reconfiguration, confirming, and 93% of the community agreed that yes, whatever we come up with for new grade levels in buildings should be something that we can sustain for an extended period of time. So we don't want to come up with a new configuration and then have to redo it in a year or two. So we proposed the following configuration in this question. We proposed that we have one school that is an early learning center that houses preschool or pre-kindergarten and kindergarten. We propose that we have another school that's a primary school that has grades 1, 2, and 3. We propose that we have another school that's an intermediate school, grades 4, 5, and 6, and then the middle school would have only grades 7 and 8 for next school year. And so we asked how the respondents felt about this, and over 84% were supportive, 11% were undecided. So we felt there was strong support for those, for that model that we were recommending. Just really quickly then, we had a lot of responses to our open-ended questions. We had hundreds and hundreds of responses, and in trying to determine how we could kind of capture that, to present it briefly and kind of in a nutshell, we decided to do an analysis of the comments and then put those into a word cloud. And if you've done the word cloud software before, you know that the larger the word, the more times that word was mentioned. So on this one, the open-ended responses related to early learning, you can see that tuition was a big item. Lots of people didn't understand tuition. They didn't realize that we already charged tuition for some kids in preschool. So there was a lot of confusion about that. None is a big word there, so you can see that a lot of people didn't have any questions or comments they wanted to add. But then there were other things like full day, space, cost, fees, and so forth. For grades 1 through 3, this word cloud, you can see there were a lot of items around SLCs, or our smaller learning communities. We got lots of feedback on that and lots to consider. Questions about busing, questions about start times, questions about lunch. And you can see across the center there, the 2-5 building was mentioned very frequently. So the majority of individuals responding to the survey felt that the 2-5 building, the current 2-5 building, is the right place to house grades 1 through 3. In the word cloud for grades 4, 5, and 6, based on the responses we received, we got a lot that said use the new building. So many people felt that grades 4, 5, and 6 should be in the new building. We got words like good idea, questions about start time, SLCs, teams. There were a lot of questions about electives or specials for 6th graders. Things like band and strings and orchestra and choir, will they still be able to access those like they do now in the middle school? In terms of the responses to the middle school configuration of grades 7 and 8, lots of feedback about the SLCs in that building. And whether we should continue that or move to a team approach like we had used in the past at the middle school. Lockers pops up fairly large there. That's a point for middle school students, especially those who were in the new building this year and had cubbies over there. A lot of people said none, and then you can see lots of other feedback around sports, equity, access, facilities, lunch, recess, and so forth. So those were the responses from the survey, and Michael's going to talk about our current building space accommodations.
Thank you, Marilyn. So we have to ground ourselves in actual physical space to understand what's actually physically available. So we learned through the parent survey that despite all the efforts for communication related to the new building during the construction process, there was still confusion about the availability of actual physical space in that location. During the analysis of the parent survey and all the data that came back, we talked about the reality of how much classroom space is actually available in each building, not including specials. So no art, no music, no PE, health classes. We're looking at standardized classroom space. Believe it or not, the 2-5 elementary school has 54 regular classroom spaces that do not include that. It's actually 150,000 square feet and was built to house 1,200 students. That's the capacity of the building. Prior to the development or creation and bond passage of the building of the new building, This building was overcrowded and 300 students actually were in this annex location because they physically would not fit in the 2-5 elementary school. The new building is 150,000 square feet. It's actually exactly the same size as the 2-5. That was deliberate in its design. It shows it has 48 regular classrooms because in the center core, there's 6 flex labs for STEM purposes. So there's still technically 54 available classroom spaces. They're both 150,000 square feet. They both house 1,200 students at maximum capacity. The middle school has 44 regular education classrooms, was built for 1,100 students. We've surpassed that based upon current enrollment numbers and grade levels and have placed 250 students in grades 6, 7, and 8 into the 2-8 flex space because they will not fit in this space. K1 Elementary School is at capacity. We used all the rooms, there's 24. It was built to house 600 students. That was the original design of the K1 Elementary. So we grounded this work in our work with the parents in the focus groups and conversations with staff. And again, there were hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of examples. And I've tried to share with the community members in the focus groups to help them understand that although there's hundreds of possibilities of what you potentially could do, we have to also ground ourselves in the responsibility of the charge from you as a Board of Education to maximize the use of existing resources to meet the academic and developmental needs of kids. So these are some exemplars, and I'm going to use one as a specific one because it's the one that's resonating with families in our community conversations that we're having. A parent suggested as a possible configuration a pre-K through 1 building, 2-5 as a grade level configuration, 6th grade by itself, and 7-8. And in the response from him or her, because I don't know who it is, they used a specific example of 6th grade in the Hilliard City Schools, that Hilliard basically converted a former school building and put all 6th graders, because 6th grade is a very special year, on an island by themselves and created their own building. And said, it seems to be working in Hilliard, could it work here? And suggested, in our world, to take 6th grade and put them in the K1 elementary school. And we talked about that, but I want to use it as an example for my resource conversation. The charge is use existing resources. Very simplistically, think about the K1. It's an early learning facility. The fixtures, let's just use fixtures. How would 6th graders use the existing fixtures at the K1? We would have to spend resources to retrofit fixtures, bathrooms, services, heights, everything else to better meet the needs of kids if we converted that building to a different grade level, such as middle school. We're not looking to spend our resources on things such as that. We have the space. Our campus is built to house 5,500 students. Today, we have 4,819 on campus. We can use our resources differently, called space, and still meet the needs of students without doing construction, because the rumor, because I've heard several in the last meetings with these 145 parents or community members that have come, they've shared, Michael, we heard you're building a 3rd floor on the middle school. That's not true. Michael, we heard you're building a new building where the baseball field is. That's not true. So we have space. We have to choose how we choose to use our existing resources. So we have plenty of space to meet the needs of our kids. I need to use the space differently, just as an example. So of all those configurations that were possible, the leadership team went back to our question, how do we maximize the use of our space for the next decade to increase academic achievement and developmental outcomes? So this is the math problem. Mr. Newmoff, you'll like this because you're an accountant. So there's 5 preschool, you like numbers, so you're a number. So these are numbers. Presently for preschool, and Dr. Troyer talked about this, we currently use 4 classrooms at the 2-5 elementary school for 8 sections of preschool. Next year, we're forecasting right now based upon Child Find, regardless of the pilot, I need probably 9 sections to meet the needs of our identified preschool students. So I need 5 classrooms for preschool. So let's tuck preschool over here. To meet the federal law requirement, I need 9 sections. Let's take our existing numbers for enrollment. I need, just using today's numbers, 11 sections for kindergarten. So it would be 11 plus 5 for preschool if we put K and preschool together. So I need at least 16 today. In grades 1 through 3 for the recommendation, I would need 49 classroom spaces. Grades 4 through 6, I would need 47. And grades 7 and 8, I need 28. In our Future Think enrollment report that you've seen, Using low enrollment out 10 years to 25, 26, I go to 14 in kindergarten, and I don't know if it's going to be 5, 6, 7, 8, or 9, because it changes potentially every year based upon the number of 3 and 4-year-olds that are found. Right now, if we just use the same number, it would be 19 sections of pre-KK. That allows us room for all-day K expansion if we use the K1 elementary school as a pre-KK building. Grades 1 through 3, I need 52. Grades 4 through 6, I need 48. Grades 7 and 8, I need 30. So just using an opposite example that all of this works for at least the next decade, using our numbers, based upon the physical number of classrooms available in a location. If we switch it, because this was a suggestion, kindergarten to preschool stays the same, but let's put grades 1 through 4 together. So first, second, third, fourth. I would need 65 and 69. Which building has that available now? None.
None.
It won't work. So we did this 41 different times. Did the research behind it to see what works, what doesn't work. And at the end of the day of doing that, it was very methodical, came to the conclusion, as we illustrated in the parent survey, that our best solution is a pre-KK configuration and using the K1 elementary school, 1 through 3, and in the answer of the survey, overwhelmingly, using the 2-5 building for primary, grades 4 through 6 at the 2-8 learning facility, and grades 7 and 8. So based upon all the work that's been concluded and conducted, it is my expectation that beginning with 2017-18, that we will, and it's not about the name, so don't get hung up on my name, because we have to talk about this, about what we're going to call these places, because we have to talk about naming. The K1 will become pre-KK. What do we want to call it? I made up New Albany Early Learning Center. Just made up. We have to talk about what it's going to be named and how we're going to go through that process. But this building should serve pre-KK. Michelle Unger will remain as the principal. She has a dominant background in early learning, and she's going to be phenomenal in that building with preschool children in kindergarten. The primary elementary school, in my world, is grades 1 through 3. Oops, sorry. Go back. There. So 2 through 5 becomes grades 1 through 3. Teresa Smith is the principal presently. She was a 3rd grade teacher. Her focus is early learning literacy. So she will be the literacy focused teacher or principal that makes sure, because the aspiration should be, every kid leaving 3rd grade should be reading at or above grade level. That's primary education. Math is important. Reading has to happen first. New Albany Intermediate Elementary Schools, grades 4, 5, 6. This is Katie Nowak. This is the new building. She's the Ohio National Principal of the Year. She was an intermediate teacher. She was a 5-6 principal before she came to the school district. She's going to be phenomenal in our intermediate school. And Mrs. LeBeau, who's here this evening, and I can give her accolades, is also an incredible find that worked very well for us. But her 15 years as a middle school principal will enable us to transform grades 7 and 8. She's doing an incredible job today. We have a completely different middle school environment thanks to Mrs. LeBeau and all the work she's doing. And I look forward to what she's going to do next year with 7th and 8th graders. But she will be the principal at grades 7 and 8. This is the recommendation for next year for a reconfiguration based upon 3.5 months worth of work. It was very intense. It was hard. It's a very fast pace, but this is what we believe will be in the best interest of kids and helping us, again, go back to our aspiration to meet your expectations. So we have to define the future. How do we choose to define and create now that these buildings exist? This is the physical space. This was technically the easy piece because the next task, I'm going to be honest and tell you, is very difficult and has to happen fairly quickly because it's called what comes next. It's the academic structures. In the parent questions, as with staff, what's the structure of the academic day? Which specials will my kid have? Will specials in grades 1, 2, 3 be the specials in 4, 5, 6? Not necessarily. Will 4th and 5th graders who change classes today for math and science and language arts and social studies, because they could have one teacher for math science, another teacher for language arts and social studies, will that continue for 4th, 5th, and 6th graders? The answer is yes, because that currently happens already in both 4th, 5th in the elementary school and 6th grade at the middle school. There's no intent that your child or any child in the school district would be with like a Mrs. Jones in a 6th grade classroom and be self-contained all day as a traditional elementary 1st grade classroom. That's not what we're looking for. The departmentalization will continue. So that academic structure, the programming, the planning, all that's on the table. Conversations are actively going on with faculty and staff across the school district to talk about those structures, but they get stuck because there's a big variable that has to be answered. And it's my current 911, and it's called bell schedules. And we're going to come back to that in just a second because it drives absolutely everything. Mrs. Kalinowski remembers 2 years ago, we had a bell schedule committee, and we knew this day was coming, and it was supposed to be next spring, but I need it to be now because I don't want to do this again next year. So we said we could get through 3 years. We're supposed to do something next year. It needs to happen now because we're going to reconfigure the students. Transportation, I'm going to talk about really in reference to the bell schedule. Furniture and equipment. So this is why we're making the decision in January. I can't get to June and figure out how to move 250 teachers and all the furniture that's appropriate for a 1st, 2nd, and 3rd grader versus a 4th, 5th, and 6th grader versus a 7th and 8th grader. I need time to put all the plans, processes, protocols, and logistics in place with our staff to make that happen. I have teachers clamoring for boxes already. So it's just, you would not believe how tremendous this entire task is going to be. But they are ready. They're willing to take it on, but like, okay, we made the decision, now let's take the next step. But I need processes in place to do that. Food service, we're doing the analysis and planning. Parents had a lot of questions. Honestly, when we talk to the kids have 3 types of areas they want to talk about. First is lunch, the second's lockers, and the third is recess. Those are the 3 things that the kids want to talk about. So in the new building, we know it has capacity to have 8 serveries. We're working with Mrs. Charles to talk about it in 456 with Mrs. Nowak about, well, what is food service next year? So what do you want to do? What's your dream? Let's talk about it. How to use your space? What options can we give kids? Lunch will happen regardless of what's happening in reconfiguration, but it's not the first decision we have to make. We have to focus on the academic stuff and the structures that we need. Survey questions, we have lots and lots of questions, as Dr. Troyer said, from parents. We're trying to group those. Patrick will explain why when you hear the communication survey results, but we're going to try to funnel them into the specific categories. Parents have shared with us, if I'm a 4, 5, 6 parent, I don't want to read all the stuff about K through 3 and 7 through 12. I only want to read the stuff that's going to pertain to grades 4, 5, 6. So we're going to organize it into those structures to allow parents to find that information readily. All-day K kindergarten registration and or kindergarten in general registration starts on February 1st. We still imagine it'll be a lottery section, but in the new configuration, it's our hope to continue to add as many all-day K sections as possible to meet the parent demand. We're still required to offer half day because it's a tuition-based experience for full day, so students will still have the option to register for half-day kindergarten. But it's our intent to offer as many all-day K sections as we can to meet the parent demand because there will be space available to do so. Preschool. Everybody wants to know when the registration process is going to start. We're working through that. There's a lot of devil in the detail associated to taking over a preschool program because we want to step up the quality program for rating purposes to meet that. So it will be an accredited program. So we're working through those details and we will share preschool information as quickly as we possibly can. But I'm going to go back to my 911 because this is what has to happen in very short order. 2 years ago, we had a bell schedule committee that went through and looked at what school days and end times could ultimately benefit students. I'm expanding that scope and putting the requirement in that what school day start and end times are necessary to maximize our resources, because that's the charge. Use your existing resources to benefit students academically and developmentally. I'm defining resources as staff, room utilization, and transportation. Everybody wants to talk about those things, and I can't answer what's the staff day until I know the student day. I can't answer what the bell schedule or what the structure of the student day is until I know the bell schedule. I have to know who's coming when to figure out how we structure their day, the number of periods, the number of minutes, how teachers travel across the school campus, because we need to efficiently use those resources, because every time a teacher travels, we lose 15 minutes. And again, back to my original statement, I'm focused on the future and increasing academic instructional time. To do that, I need triple routing. So we looked at this 2 years ago and honestly made a very deliberate decision based upon the parent input at the time that we would not go to triple routing because it was possible to maintain double routing using the existing fleet if we eliminate students from transportation. We could have maintained some transportation 2 years ago, but chose not to do that for a later start time for middle school, high school students. My reality is that was a 2-year solution, 3-year best. So we would have gotten through next year, but would be facing this dilemma that we have to make the decision. It's my recommendation that we do that now and not next year because I don't want to change this twice. We're moving the kids for grade levels. I need a triple route to efficiently use our buses. So what does that mean? I need to group kids K3, 4, 6, 7, 12. 712 maintains the 2-mile rule. In the parent survey we did in reconfiguration, overwhelmingly people are asking me, you found a creative solution to get K through 5 back on buses. Some kids have to ride 3 to a seat, but you figured out how to do it. If you go to a 4-6 configuration, please tell me the 6th graders are going to have an option related to transportation. There is an option possible, as the Bell Schedule Committee ultimately discovered and discussed 2 years ago, but it requires using our 27 in-town buses, because that's our fleet in town, to travel 23 geographical miles every single day for efficiency purposes, differently than what we do today. I need 3 schedules. So I need kids to come to school at 3 distinct times that are 45 minutes apart. That's the only way I can use existing resources. If we do what we do today and transport K through, in this case, it would be 6 because we're taking them out of the middle school. If I try to put K through 6 on our existing bus fleet and transport 712, my estimate today is I need 8 to 10 more buses. I can't stand here as the superintendent and tell you it's an efficient and effective use of our resource to purchase 8 to 10 more buses and hire 8 to 10 more drivers when I could use our existing bus fleet and do even more for kids just by creating a 3rd bell time. The most responsible answer I can give you, and I've stated this in our parent meetings so far, and it's going to continue to come out through State of the Schools, is I need 3 bell times. So rather than facing this next spring, we're doing it now, and I need it in a fast track order, so I'm working on how I'm going to achieve that, and Mrs. Kalinowski knows there's a lot of discussion because I'll be honest and tell you, no matter what I do with this answer, someone's not going to be happy. Someone has to come to school first, and to do 45-minute swings and 3 routes, we have to start school earlier. I'm not saying it has to be middle school, high school, but 2 years ago, that was the overwhelming feedback that middle school, high school has to come first. We have to face this challenge because we went through all the research related to brain research and sleep studies and what it meant for high school, middle school kids versus what it means for elementary students. And the community was not interested. They made a decision. We want sleep for middle school, high school, and we'll sacrifice busing because we want a double bell schedule and make the elementary kids lose it as far as transportation. I can't do that because I can't come to you as the superintendent and say, I recommend we buy 8 more buses and hire 8 more drivers. It's irresponsible to do that. We don't need to if we use our existing bus fleet differently. So it will be my recommendation that we create 3 bell schedules for next year. I'm going through the process with the leadership team right now to narrow the scope of our options, and we'll figure out how we're going to discuss this publicly, but I need a decision in short order. We will not spend 12 weeks going through this process that we did 2 years ago because we've already done that, and I know what it says. So I need to come up with a solution, back to your point, of using efficient and effective use of resources that benefits our kids. Mrs. Kalinowski?
So before we were at 8 o'clock for high school, middle school, was it 7:30?
Yes.
And do you know, have the teachers seen a difference in the kids and their performance with the half-hour additional sleep?
Right, and I can't formally answer that. I believe there has been some benefit, clearly, but we're working through the high school process right now to gather the data to understand what is that difference, because in anecdotal conversations, including both with staff, even with parents in our community meetings we've held over the last 2 days, people are seeing a difference.
Yeah.
But to continue to do that, then someone else has to come to school first. So we're going to have to make a decision, and using these as examples, you have 3 choices: K3, 4, 6, 7, 12. And hypothetically, I'm just going to throw them out as an example. I'm not saying this is what they are, because we still are playing with this. There's specific requirements I have to meet. Our teacher day is between 7 a.m. and 4 p.m., currently contractual. I can start no earlier than 7, I leave by 4. Within those 9 hours, I can work 7.5 hours. So once I know the student day, I can create the teacher day, but I can't exceed 4 p.m. I can't start before 7, can't start or leave after 4. So hypothetically, if we had 3 start times, just to throw them out, a 7:30, an 8:15, and a 9 o'clock. I need those 3. So if it's a 7:30, 8:15, and 9 o'clock, who comes first? 2 years ago, the decision was 7 through 12, but we want to start at 8 o'clock. Which pushed elementary back to 9:20. I need 45 minutes to swing the bus and use our existing fleet differently. So to do that, we just have to choose. And the question is, and I'm looking for input from the board, because at the end of the day, I know I get to own this. I get the love mail and the hate mail. I get it. But what's the process or opinion that we go through to demonstrate that we try to listen? Because 2 years ago, it was overwhelming. 7:12 had to come first. So if you start at 7:30 in the morning, you're out by 2:15. If you start at 8 o'clock, you're likely out by 3:30. You start at 9 o'clock, you're out by 3:45, depending on what we do. But I'm trying to build options where I can get 10 to 15 minutes more instructional time in grades K through 8.
You and I talked about,
It matters.
we talked about splitting that time. The 7:45, did that fall?
It still goes beyond the 8 or the 4 o'clock end time. So if we use today's routes as an example and start at 8 o'clock, we would have kids that get home from school at 5. Parents aren't going to live with that. No one does it. Back to your question about the start times, and we looked at all of this data 2 years ago. And the hard part is the Bell Schedule Committee knew that we had to face this within 3 years. So we would technically not be doing it till next spring, but it doesn't make sense to fix our space and reconfigure kids and not talk about how they're going to come to school. And if we're going to fix that, then we need to fix it now and not a year from now. The transitions all need to happen at the same time. And honestly, it's a better, more efficient use of our resource. It's going to help me with social emotional behavior on buses. I don't have kindergartners on buses with 5th graders. They're not the same. They're very different. Putting kids 4, 5, 6 together is actually better for us than 6th graders riding with high school kids, because that's where we see discipline issues or bully-like behavior. So there are many, many benefits for kids, but the biggest one I see in going to triple routing is the increase of academic instructional time, which helps us for where we aspire to be. So this is coming. That's the big one. I'm hoping to have more information for State of the Schools on January 23rd. So we will have the State of the Schools address, both for academics and finances within our school district. Ms. Jenkins and I are the primaries that will be presenting that information, and ultimately open it now for questions or comments from the board.
So how will you, what are your next steps on the Bell schedule?
This is thinking out loud, okay? Because the leadership team's still going through this, but hopefully cabinet will help me get to the final conclusion. The current thought process is we come up with a truncated way to explain the history of the Bell Schedule Committee, the research that was done, and the conclusions that were made, where we're at today because of reconfiguration, and the fact that we're going to have to face this a year from now. And now we're going to do this as part of reconfiguration, so everything happens at once. I hope to basically be able to give options to parents to say, if we have to have 3 distinct start times, which is what we asked the last time, and I'm just going to use the example I already used. I don't know if that'll be that. I'm just going to use it as an example. If someone has to come at 7:30, someone has to come at 8:15, and someone has to come at 9 o'clock, from your parent perspective, Who would you like to see come first, second, or third? We listen to what that says, compare it to the research, and that was our problem the last time. The empirical research related to brain research clearly indicates middle school, high school students should sleep later in the morning. But no public school district, private or parochial, honors that, because the challenge becomes in the afternoon. I want my older student home for daycare. We heard this 2 years ago. My child's in sports. My child has a job. So I need them out, so they need to come first. And when we look at bell schedules across central Ohio or throughout the state of Ohio, we don't have late start times for high schools. Today in our school district, just as an example, and it's not known because it's an out of district route, but because we, under Ohio law, we are required to transport to private and parochial schools, as you know, that are within 30 minutes of the school campus. For transportation purposes. So we transport to Columbus School for Girls in St. Charles. Our pickup for CSG in St. Charles starts at 6:20 a.m. because we drive the route to basically take one bus downtown for efficiency. It's full with CSG in St. Charles, but we start at 6:20 for pickup for CSG in St. Charles. Our earliest bus today in the school district leaves for in-town routes of the 27. We start pickup between 7:20 and 7:25 because we have an 8 o'clock start time. We drop at 7:50 at the middle school, high school loop for the new building. So to your point, my goal is to truncate all the information in a very consolidated way as much as I possibly can, reference the resources that are available on our website for ultimately additional information if someone wants to dive into it, explain why the efficient and effective use of our bus fleet and the academic benefit of instructional time results in the need for 3 distinct start and end times. And although I'm saying 3, I'm putting pre-K through 3 together, and in our current world, pre-KK, much like pre-K1, will be 10 minutes different than grades 1 through 3 because we use the same buses to go between 2 buildings. So although I'm saying it's 3 schedules, there's a 10-minute differential in one of them because we transport those kids together in our school district.
And the way we have them lumped together right now, like busing 7 through 12 and those categories,
We bus 6 through 12 today. We bus K5, 612. 612 today is greater than 2 miles.
is that the only way we can, I mean, I don't want to open this can of worms, but is that the only way we can look at grouping those kids?
For next year in the reconfiguration, if we do not use triple routing, their only other option beyond triple routing is to eliminate more busing, which was discussed amongst the bell schedule, which would include even looking at excluding high school kids completely from transportation. So for the benefit of students, just standing here because of all the work we're doing, I believe triple routing is the solution. I increase academic instructional time for kids, which to me is the priority. It's not about the bus, but I don't want to buy buses. I don't want to spend money on buses and hire drivers because I can't find drivers now. I'm 3 short. So for infomercial purposes for the internet, if anyone would like to earn a CDL and become a bus driver, we'd be happy to train you. I need 3 bus drivers and I could hire you tomorrow. I can't find them. I can't go out in good conscience and say to you, when you're looking at the 5-year forecast, we should take on an additional expenditure every single year hereafter in this structure where we can create 8 more bus routes for convenience of 2 schedules. It just doesn't make any sense to me. Academically, triple routing gives me 15 more minutes of potential instructional time. That's what we're here for.
How many more minutes?
Up to 15.
So, I mean, it kind of becomes a simple math problem, right? So if we know that our hard stop end of the day is 4 p.m. based on the contractual agreement, and you need to give, I'm guessing,
I need 35 minutes for the route and 10 minutes for loading and unloading. So it's 45
Right.
minutes.
but I mean, so your hard stop's 4, you have to probably end the day a little earlier because you got to give time to wrap up and close up shop and get out, right? So 3:45 is your,
345, 350 is the furthest
Okay.
I can go to get kids on buses.
okay, so then you backfill the day which means the latest start time you could do is 9 o'clock right now? Okay, so that's 9, 8:15, 7:30, and that's just what it is. So there's really no other way to argue this. You got a hard stop based on the contract. 7:30 is where it is.
And the question becomes, and I think this is where I'm going to try to do in State of the Schools, because I really think we need to try to engage parents and talk about it, but in the communications we can send to try to explain it, is to try to understand that, look at the research and think about your own child, because I'm just going to use like the practical piece of what happens today on campus. We open Eagles Nest for before and after school care. So I'm going to talk about before school care. At 6:30 in the morning, we have 6 kids here every single day. At 7 o'clock, we're at 36 kids. At 7:30, I'm at 112 every day. Breakfast Club starts at 8 o'clock. We're over 250 between Eagles Nest and Breakfast Club. So they're on campus, but they're sitting in Eagles Nest and Breakfast Club for all the kids that need before and after school care. So in the afternoon, we have over 250 kids in Eagles Nest. So 2 years ago, Mrs. Kalinowski will remember this, we tried to explain in the research related to sleep, we absolutely agree there's a benefit for middle school and high school students, but you're ignoring the research about what the brain's doing for early learners, because think about your child at home. An elementary child's typically in bed between 8:30 and 9:30, depending on their age. They're up, they're wired, they're ready, and they're sitting at home waiting 2 hours to come to this place called school. And because the parent is working, in many cases, they go to before and after school care. And we're trying to balance all the needs and figure out what could we do. So in that end, in the last parent session, we had a pretty robust conversation about, okay, if middle school and high school can't come first, back to our example, when you think about the configurations, what's the possibility that 4 through 6 comes first?
That's what I was thinking.
So that they could still sleep another half an hour. What if they're the 7:30 because of what the research says? Can it be a win-win?
Yeah.
And then these would be 8:15, which is actually 15 minutes later than what it is now, today, because they come in at 8 o'clock. But their pickup, ultimately, because you have to remember, if it's a 7:30 start, the first kid 23 miles away gets picked up at 7 a.m. It's 30 minutes before that when pickup starts. So could they come first, they come second, and the little kids come third? Because that's been the will of the community input in the past. But I don't know as the community changes its opinion in 2 years. So I think it's worth asking and saying, here's our dilemma, here's all the benefits, here's what our requirements are, here's all the considerations, and the bottom line is, I need 3 schedules. Someone's coming at 7:30 as an example, someone's coming at 8:15, someone's coming at 9. From your perspective, which order would you like to see? We collect the input, we look at the research, we do the analysis, and then I have to make a recommendation.
And from the research, if you just went pure research, what's best for kids would be which option?
Technically, the research would argue K3 is first, and then 4-6, and then 7-12. And it's reversed, but it's against this culture of this thing called education, because no one follows the research. And I shouldn't say no one. School districts in Ohio are not doing that. If you go to Arizona, that's the order. You start with elementary because that's what the research says you should do, because their brain is wired that way. But in Ohio, we have leagues, interscholastic sports, kids have jobs. So it becomes more than just about the academics, and we're focused on the academics. That's our responsibility, and that's your aspiration. And I'm trying to create solutions for that. And that's why it's a hard decision to balance what this is. And it was and parents in these meetings have been wonderful because they understand the dilemma once they hear it. They don't know how to solve it because they know not everyone's going to be happy. But we're going to have to make a decision, and mine's both academic and fiscal. Academically, I can gain instructional time by going to 3 distinct schedules within the school district, and that will be the recommendation that's coming forward. So I want to prep you because Mrs. Kalinowski and Mrs. Kohler and Mr. McClellan will remember this. When I start to roll this out, your phone is going to ring. I guarantee it.
It already is.
You got phone calls in the past. So this is a huge topic for families. It's very emotional because it is change, but I have to figure it out because you've charged me to increase the academic outcomes for kids and meet their developmental needs and use our resources wisely. And I think I've demonstrated a solution that does that. We have to make a decision. So I don't think that this needs to be dragged out. We've got to get to it, get to a conclusion, get our input, and make a decision.
I really like your idea of 4-6 first, then 7-12, then K3, because I feel like that kind of is a compromise in terms of, you know, the studies and research on sleep, as well as the need to have the older kids home before the younger kids.
I'm not going to predispose or predetermine what the right answer is. I think you're on the right path, Michael. And my advice or recommendation would be that you continue down the path you're on. Just maybe a little reminder in the form of a quip. The plural of anecdote is not data. I think the data should govern. I think we should go where the evidence takes us and make the right decision for kids. That's our primary purpose.
Any other questions or comments related to reconfiguration?
I want to commend you on the work that you've done. I don't want the importance of reconfiguration to get lost in the discussion about transportation and triple routing. I think that what you've done is you've explored multiple options. You've gathered the right input from all the stakeholders who will be impacted by it. You've looked at the research. You've made some very, very sound and compelling conclusions, which I certainly support. I certainly support your recommendation and your plans for reconfiguration. I also support your plans for triple routing. And I guess my question for you is, what do you need from us?
Patience on the phone. You're listening because you're going to get phone calls and emails. You can redirect people if you can't answer the question. But we're looking to go through this process expeditiously, so we'll put that in place. I want to get into no later than early February, if not before, and announce the outcome, that this is what we're doing. In the perfect world, if January 23rd was another week away, we probably could get more information done and collect some more information. I just can't get everything done in that time frame. So I know this is still going to be a question that's out there. So we're working on it behind the scenes with leadership. I thank you for your continued support and your listening ear, because I honestly believe you will get emails and phone calls. That was our experience 2 years ago. Mrs. Kalinowski can tell you, we spent an inordinate amount of time on this work. It's very, very important. But at the end of the day, and I said this at the parent meetings, our intent is to do what's best for kids. And that's the focus. And I found solutions that actually increase instructional time. And if I can do that without increased cost, that is a huge benefit for our students. And to me, that's paramount over absolutely everything.
I agree.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
There is a ton of excitement around this. People are overwhelmingly, happy with the reconfiguration. And I just want to echo what Laura said, which is, I think it's outstanding work. And I'm personally super excited to get the grades together and utilize the buildings differently. And I think it's really exciting.
Next, we're going to talk about the 2016 Gallup survey results, and I've asked Mr. Emery, the Director of Elementary Education, to take you through the student responses so you can understand the results we received from kids. Mr. Emery?
Thank you, Superintendent. If we look at our continuous improvement goals that you set for us in October, benchmark number 5 was for us to gather baseline data on the school culture and social and emotional well-being of our students. At that same time, we were very fortunate that the Gallup survey became available to Superintendent Sawyers. The Gallup survey has no cost to administer. It's available to all students in the United States, grades 5 through 12. And we made a choice in New Albany to not do a sampling of our students in grades 5 through 12, but to instead assess all of our students. And great credit to Mrs. Nowak and Mrs. Smith and Mrs. LeBeau and Principal Carter for allowing time in very short notice for all of our students to take part in this assessment. Over 900,000 students in America took part in the Gallup survey. But it's interesting, they ask if you publicly share data, that you only share your local data and not publicly share the national data. I have that data and we can share it with you, and I'll make reference to that, but you won't actually see the national data on the slides.
Interesting.
The Gallup questionnaire was pretty straightforward for the boys and girls. It was 24 questions. What I really liked about it is it even went beyond benchmark number 5. We were able to capture some information that really wasn't in our original intent when looking at the social emotional well-being of our students. It was separated in 4 categories, and you can see those on the slide: engagement, hope, your aspiration to be an entrepreneur, and financial literacy. When we looked at that first area of engagement, you'll see 2 highlighted areas. These were the 2 that New Albany students stood out the most when compared to the sampling of American students. We scored the biggest difference in terms of students feeling safe at school. We are a full half point above the national average on the Likert scale. The students are, I guess I should explain, the students are asked to do 1, strongly disagree, up to 5, which is strongly agree, with 3 being neutral. So you can see that we have a stronger than agree rating for I feel safe in school. And that's very important to us. The other area we really stood out were that the students answered that they feel there's an adult at their school that cares about them. The second category, hope. One thing that stood out, again, compared to the national norm, is that our students feel as though they have a mentor that encourages their development. The Gallup survey doesn't tease out if that's someone from church, school, a parent, a sibling, but we are encouraged to see that our students feel that they have a mentor. So even though the overall rating is below agree, we still outperformed in terms of our students' responses to the national average. In terms of their aspirations to be an entrepreneur, these were really shockingly low to me, but still we're in line with the national averages. One thing that's interesting is we get this data back, and this is how we share it at the building level, really by grade band. So I don't know if it's a credit to some of the junior achievement programming, but our 5th graders seem to have a much higher interest in starting their own business than any other grade, and it sort of decreases through their senior year of high school. And then in the last area, financial literacy and career readiness, probably our strongest area compared to anything nationally was having a bank account with money in it. But interestingly, we're below the national average in terms of learning how to save and spend money. So that's an area of opportunity. As we look at some of the new course offerings that you'll see that Mrs. LeBeau will share later with life skills, how can we start to incorporate some of that into direct instruction in our coursework? And what was really encouraging is probably our strongest area in any part of the survey were students that are involved. And that was consistent, grades 5 through 12, very consistent data. Really peaking in 7th grade, interestingly, that students are involved in some activity. And obviously that's an important asset to a child's development. So next steps, this is our baseline data. This was our charge as part of benchmark number 5. Now we need to put it into action. So we're sharing it with the principals first. They'll then work with their counselors, staff, and Mr. Sawyers was great in the fact that this is a free tool, but he did allow us to spend $75 on a kit from Gallup to help us put it actually into action. So we did get it. Well, it was. I mean, we appreciate that because it really gives us some tools that Gallup has developed that we can start using at the building level.
Passing the hat.
So planning for the future, that's really the key question. So now we have the data, what are we going to do with it? Any questions or comments about our baseline for Gallup?
No surprises, anything really jump out. I mean, I know you went through several, but
Well, I think in terms of feeling joy and happiness at school, that did sort of deteriorate from 5th grade as you progress through the trend line. That was in line with the national average, but that's something obviously as any parent of a child progressing through school, you want to continue to see them be happy. But we saw an interesting bump with our seniors. I think once they know they're almost there.
They did score higher. It was very interesting.
Yes, and I think one area would be that junior year. What's happening at the beginning of your junior year? This is baseline, so I can't speak for all juniors.
Right.
But there did seem to be, that's a stressful time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so this is great information for us to look at and see what we can do with it.
And to that end, for the juniors, if you, you remember, junior year in high school is the hardest year.
Yeah.
So their interpretation on this survey was very different than the seniors. And it's almost that hope aspect that I know I'm in the final stretch versus I'm like up to my eyeballs in content because junior year is very difficult. So it was interesting to see that. But again, as Mr. Emery said, we're in line with the national data in that grade level because we have it disaggregated. We can share that information with you. But again, as Mr. Emery said, one of the conditions of the free participation is you have to honor the rollout. So there's specific conditions. So we have the information that we happily can provide. We just cannot use it in presentation format because we did not pay for the survey administration. That is an option now, but we did it during the free window. So, and that's our intent moving forward, that we have the baseline.
This is great.
So thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we're going to talk about our parent and guardian communication survey results. And I've asked Mr. Galloway, the Director of Communications, and Beth Steele, the Communications Coordinator, to share this information with you that we've gathered from our families related to district communications at the district, building, and classroom level.
Yes, thank you. Happy New Year. Welcome back, everyone. So first off, I want to thank Superintendent Sawyers for letting us even take on this survey because we have not had this opportunity as a communication staff to really talk to our families and understand from them, what are your needs? We hear it anecdotally. We hang out at the bus loop and the drop-offs and ask parents, what's going on? What do you need? What are you not getting from us? But this was a great opportunity for us to work with Hanover Research, who is a respected national organization out of Virginia, to really focus this on 3 different areas. So a district, school building, and even the classroom. We've never had this opportunity before, so this is really amazing for us. And my colleague, Mrs. Beth Steele here, who's also a parent in the district, was very instrumental in helping develop this survey and also putting together the presentation you'll see tonight. So appreciate her so much. So this aligns with benchmark number 7 in the continuous improvement plan. So ensuring community engagement and stakeholder satisfaction. Again, we mentioned Hanover Research, very robust. I mean, if you took the survey, you remember it might have taken you about 12 to 15 minutes to get through it. There were a lot of questions, and we really wanted to gather that detailed info from parents. We appreciate the robust response. So I have colleagues that work for other school districts, Mason City Schools, other districts around the state that are similar to us. And I've asked them, I know they've conducted surveys like this. They're happy to get 300 to 400 parents responding. We had 1,124 responses. And Hanover tells us that typically you'll get a 12% return. Ours was 22%.
Wow.
So we either have parents who have a lot to say, which is great, and we love that, or maybe they just had a lot of free time on their hands. I'm not sure what was going on. But this slide also shows you the breakdown of which school building mainly they associated with when they did submit their responses. So we noticed that you'll see a higher participation rate middle and high school, which was interesting to us. So,
That surprises me.
and if you have questions along the way, just let me know. So some of the key findings that we've outlined here in terms of satisfaction with communication, over 2/3 of parents responded are very or extremely satisfied, especially with teacher responsiveness to parent concerns. So that hit us right here. I mean, that is why we're here. And that is at the heart of what we should be expecting to see and hearing from our parents. So we're really thrilled to see that. We also found that there's great variance among classroom, building, and district in terms of how parents are responding and what they're responding to, and the ways that they want to be communicated with. So you have an 18-pager in your packet that gives you a lot more of a deeper dive into all of this. So when you do have some time, kind of take a look at that and try to digest some of it. What we also did is we tried to pull out some pull quotes, but basically from what parents are saying. And this to us was just so informative. And Beth and I tried to come up with, what are the most common themes that we're seeing? And so you'll see these broken down throughout this presentation by classroom, school, and district. So again, it's tough when you think about the volume of students, the volume of classes in our school district, and the volume of teachers. And the whole concept of uniformity came through loud and clear to us. So parents might have teachers who communicate regularly via a weekly email. Fantastic. And they feel very happy about that communication. Others may still get a paper newsletter that comes home in a backpack. That's great. So every teacher kind of has their own sort of ideas on how do I best communicate with my families, talk to them about what their child's progress is, et cetera. They've also responded well to this year having a lot more building specific, and as you noticed probably as a parent, I'm sure, we've given buildings sort of days when this is my day when I send my newsletter out once a week, et cetera. And they've been happy overall from the district communications. So in terms of the frequency, now this is one thing we feel a little challenged by from the district perspective. So the most common themes and responses that came back, of course, they want weekly communication from the classroom. Who doesn't? That's a given. And we think that that is happening pretty much across the district. Bi-weekly or monthly from building administrators. That's tough. I mean, Principal LeBeau is here. She has to keep her parents informed, and our buildings are doing a weekly, and I think that's really important. So we're going to talk about how do we streamline some of that communication. And then a monthly from the district. Everything that Superintendent Sawyer's talked about up here, if you only get a monthly communication from us, you'd be out of the loop. So let's think about that too, but how can we maybe reduce, streamline a lot of that communication as well? So we're going to talk about, our frequency, et cetera. None of these things are surprises to us. So again, some of the things of what parents are saying, love that weekly communication from the classroom, consolidated email from the building, which we really have just taken on in the past few years. And then this is, we looked at the good, the bad, and the ugly here. So there are too many emails sometimes. We're aware of that. And so we try to find ways to, Mrs. LeBeau, what are you sending out today? What crucial messages might you be doing this week, and what are the districts sending out? So let's not like flood people, and we know that that happens. So we're trying to be a lot more conscientious of that. So in terms of mode, definitely people want the communications pushed to them. We know that everyone is busy. We're busy. So let's put it right in front of them. It's hard for them to kind of take the time to go and search portals, search the website, et cetera. Email, of course, is the #1 preferred, highly #1 preferred in the results. And you'll see that in your 18-pager. But we will continue using that, but learn how to streamline our messages better. The other thing that we find interesting, I want to share with you, is that on our newswire that we send out weekly as a district, we have 6,156 unique emails that goes to. That's parents and staff. And our latest edition, well, the edition first week back, January 3rd, 53% open rate. That's a big deal. That's a really good response rate that has been opened. That's not someone just glancing at it through their feed, et cetera. So we're happy with that, and we're glad that we have the tools where we can see those types of statistics. Other things here in terms of message notification. This is so important. We had 2 2-hour delays this week, which caused early mornings for a lot of us. I don't love them myself, but we do it, and that's the most stressful 20 minutes of my life usually. So a text message is definitely preferred for those types of events. And we get that. But right now, parents are a little overwhelmed. If you're a parent sitting up here, you know what happens. You get a phone call, you get a text message, you get an email.
All the bells go off.
I know, it's a little crazy. Some people want it, believe me.
You sound pretty excited when you deliver
My froggy voice and, hey, good morning. So what we are going to be able to do in the near future, very near, and this is a heads up for everyone watching at home, is we're going to have a way with our school messenger system, parents can tailor the way they receive these communications. If you only want the text for snow days, whatever, maybe the principal wants to send something about an event coming up, what have you, you can do that. Low lunch balances, et cetera. But if you still, if we're having a lockdown or an emergency situation on campus, you're still going to get a phone call. So there are going to be ways that these things can be tailored by our parents. Now, this was not a shocker to me, but I include all these numbers on our social media use just so you see them. Parents in this survey are not following us quite as brisk as I hope on social media. So we're like a 10 to 9% on most of our platforms. But there are a lot of people following us. Who are these people? So we think that's family members. They're family members, community. And to us, to Mrs. Steele and I, this is exciting because this is a way we are reaching other people that aren't our parents, that aren't our families. And one thing
Students?
I'm sorry?
Could they be students?
Absolutely. And a perfect example of that is Instagram, which we launched just this summer. And our senior seminar student helped us research and launch that, Alejandro, which we're very, very happy with his research and all the work he did. That number I pulled just in the beginning of the week, 961. Today I checked it. We are at 1,064 in just like 4 days. So I think that the concert video from Monday night got a ton of attention, especially when the young, 8th grade? Our 8th grader, Sarah, a surprise vocalist, which was an amazing video. If you get on there and watch it, it's pretty cool. So no one knew that was coming, and that was awesome. But we are still going to use all of this. We're not throwing any of it out. I know that we don't have a lot of parents that might be following some of these, but we have to grow that and keep nurturing it. So, okay, so some more quotes from parents. Too many platforms. Now, what does that mean? So I sat down and wrote down, this is just what I know of. So there could be more. Portals, email, S'more, Dojo, paper newsletters, Remind 101. These are just some of the things that teachers and staff are using to communicate with parents, teachers, each other, to students. So there's a lot of stuff out there. So we have to really have this conversation with everyone to talk about what are the best practices. And I think that's what's going to happen because we've noticed in this one, so Mr. Sawyer, or Superintendent Sawyer sent out, was it Friday to staff? He got responses from staff. Hey, this is what I'm using. It's really effective. People are going to start talking and start working with each other to say, what is the most effective way to reach your parent? So that's exciting to us. But we want to help shepherd that as well. Again, social media, parents that did respond, they like it, but it's got to be the celebrations. We're not using social media for the need to know, very important information. And that's really what it is for. But some parents, like I said, they like all three things coming to them at once, the text, email, phone call. So in terms of content, this is a no-brainer as well. No surprise. I want to know when it's personally affecting my child. They're falling behind. Something has happened and they're challenged in my class. Parents want to know that. That's no surprise, and we were not surprised or shocked by seeing that. What we feel we need to do is work with building principals maybe a little more, and it's time for that revisit. I mean, most of our principals came on this year, so we want to start sitting down and having those meetings. We're going to meet with Richie also, Richie Wildenhouse, our athletic director, kind of have a check-in with him. This is about his half-year time because he is brand new as well. Portals, we know it's a big challenge because some teachers honestly aren't using the portal. They've got some basic info there, but they're communicating with their parents in another way. So these are conversations, and Mike Voss, our technology director, we've all talked about it, but how do we kind of come to this decision of what are we going to do moving forward? So these are great conversation starters in our mind. And then, of course, over communicating is a problem, duplication. So we've already started kind of doing that in our district-wide communications, Newswire. We're trying to keep that all district-level information. We don't need to always be putting in what's happening at the middle school this certain day. Now, there are celebrations that we will still include because we want to help do that and help promote the great work that's happening. So I know this slide's very busy, but hopefully you can see that better in your handout. So here are some of our action plan items. The info center is what we call that mechanism that we will be able to launch where parents will be able to select, this is how I want to be communicated with. We want to increase the text opt-in by parents. We're at 60%. We would like to see that grow by 10% or more, which I think after the 2-hour delays this week, we'll probably get some people to jump on. Email is always going to still be. We can start thinking about streamlining. Website. We have a huge opportunity with the website. So we launched that site in 2014. Lots of community input into the creation of it. We even had a communications focus group that helped us do that. Reconfiguration is going to let us reconfigure the website. So it's time for a refresh. And we are benchmarking already, seeing some school districts that we really like what they're doing, and they're actually with our vendor, which will help us tremendously because they're already helping these districts tailor their website in a different way to just help people find things more easily. But we'll also work with schools. As I said, we'll work with the principals to help them as well. And then the big one to tackle is how do we help teachers? So that's what we need to start thinking of as a communication team, but also as a leadership team. So that's pretty much the overview. There's so much more you can dive into. Again, we thank our families for the response. 1,124 responses. I mean, we were really blown away. And I credit Hanover for that as well, because we actually used them to send the emails, the reminders to get people to help. And it was a 3-week window. So we think that really helped us in terms of the robust response. So are there any questions anyone has or feel good?
Great information.
Good information, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, we have not been able to do this, so
Yeah.
it's pretty amazing. And now we take it back, implement our action plan, and go from there.
Will you keep us posted on your action plan?
Absolutely. Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Great.
Thanks.
Thank you, Patrick and Beth. Next, for communication purposes, we're going to do a brief update on the fall 3rd grade reading test results because the data is back from the State Department of Education for our current 3rd graders within our school district for the required 3rd grade reading guarantee test. And I've asked Mr. Emery to actually walk you through the district results. Mr. Emery?
Thank you, Superintendent Sawyers. This ties into benchmark number 1, which is increased achievement. As Superintendent Sawyers shared, we did receive back our 3rd grade fall reading test results. It's actually an English language arts test. And I want to talk a little bit how that ties into the 3rd grade reading guarantee, which is an Ohio law. It's been in effect for several years. And students in 3rd grade need to receive a certain promotion score in order to be promoted to 4th grade under Ohio law. This English language arts test, which we just call the ELA test, is separated into 3 parts: nonfiction reading, fiction reading, and writing. And it's graded by the state, even though the students take it in the fall, as though it's an end of the year 3rd grade assessment. So that has an impact on the scores. The 3 sections, all parents will get later this month an overall score. And then the promotion score is actually based just on the 2 reading sections. It's called the 3rd grade reading guarantee. And the state does allow for districts, if they choose to have an additional assessment. You often hear about the MAP test. The MAP is an approved assessment by the Ohio Department of Education for students to be promoted to 4th grade if they get the necessary score. So our overall passage rate this fall compared to fall of 2015 increased 12%. And Mr. Sawyer's contacts with other superintendents and curriculum leaders around the state, that's one of the highest he's been able to find. And in fact, in some cases, double digits higher than neighboring suburban districts. Unlike the spring results, Ohio does not release fall results publicly, so you won't see a chart in the Columbus Dispatch next week, but through informal conversations, this was a very high passage rate. The 64% seem high, maybe not, but remember it's an end of the year test that we give in November for 3rd grade students. Our greatest increase was on the writing section, where we saw a 12% gain of students scoring at or above proficient on their essay writing. Students are expected to write 1 essay, either an opinion piece or an informational piece. We don't know to the day that the students take the test which it will be. And 92% of our students right now, effective in January, have already met the requirement to be promoted to 4th grade. Our performance index score, if you look back at benchmark number 1, we're striving to be in the top 5%. The state of Ohio's performance index stayed stagnant. From fall of 2015, our score went up 7 points. So we're gaining ground. Without that public release of our similar districts, it's hard to know how much ground we gained on them to get to be in the top 9% of all Ohio districts. But I'm very proud of the results that our boys and girls had on this fall test. Our K-3 literacy grade, you may remember those grades were shared with you earlier this year and the state report cards came out, and it was not at all what the board expected. Right now, we don't anticipate any score lower than a B based on the results that we already have from this school year for the 2.5 elementary school and the 2.8 elementary school in their current configurations. So what happens next? Right now, Kate Toma, who's helping coordinate, she's one of our assistant principals, all the information, we're getting together and preparing them to get the results home to moms and dads, which should happen within the next 2 weeks. Third grade teachers have been great analyzing the data. We've been putting plans in place to get those 8% of the students that haven't met their promotion scores, so they will meet their promotion scores. The goal with this is 100% every year. We want 100% of our students going on to fourth grade and not being held back because of the reading guarantee. Any student who's at risk for retention, I'll be candid, there were only 6 students who popped up on this assessment of over 350 children that we didn't already have something in place for that didn't get the needed promotion score. But that's what I like about the fall test. We now are aware of these 6 students that are going to need this bump. Each one of those 6, they only missed it by 1 or 2 points, but we'll get them to where they need to be. They have more opportunities to earn the promotion score to be promoted to fourth grade. We have another MAP assessment in March. We have the spring version of the Ohio test that's coming up in April. And if at that point we still have any students left that haven't met their promotion score, the state does allow us to re-administer the test once this summer. We can also use the MAP again this summer. I'm extremely confident, barring any late move-ins that we have to adapt to or other unique situations, we'll be able to report to you this summer that 100% of our students are being promoted. All right, just a quick summary of the fall results. So any questions?
Yeah, you mentioned 64% overall passage rate is considered high. Why is that?
Well, the third grade end of the year, the third grade test is the only test of all the elementary exams we get from the state that we're allowed to give in the fall, and that's because of the third grade reading guarantee. But it's graded by the state as though we gave it in April.
Gotcha.
So that's 60, I guess you could look at it this way, 64% of our students
Our starting third
where
grade.
we'd expect them to be
Right.
at the end of third grade in November.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Great stuff.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Emery. And I want to thank Mr. Emery and the building principals and the assistant principals and really the third grade teachers. I think the gains that we have seen are a direct result of the hard work and that has gone on within the curriculum division, in this case specifically the elementary division, with Mr. Emery working with the third grade teachers to unpack and understand the rubrics associated. And I use writing. We had a significant gain in writing, but we did deliberate professional development and work with the third grade teachers to look at the rubrics and talk about the opinion and or informational piece that the students would be writing. And the kids have actually implemented that to date. So I think it had a direct result on the impact of what we actually saw by having deliberate action by the curriculum division. So I thank Mr. Emery and the third grade teachers and their building administrators for their efforts. And we were very happy to celebrate that with the third grade teachers. Dr. Troyer and I went to congratulate them and have a very nice conversation. And they were super excited to get the reports back. There's still work to be done. But as Mr. Emery said, in my conversations, because there is no report published by the department, but I've had candid conversations anecdotally with other superintendents in Central Ohio, and we have some of the highest results. So I'm very proud of the work that our third grade staff has done.
Great.
That's super. Great news.
Next, I've asked Mrs. LeBeau for communication purposes, given all the work that the Board of Education's heard related to middle school electives, even back to last school year, if you remember the registration process, we've had a lot of conversations historically about middle school electives and what could be possible in this case as we look towards next year for grades 7 and 8. So I've asked Mrs. LeBeau to come as the middle school principal and share the work that she and Dr. Hamilton have led from a curriculum perspective with the middle school electives committee and where we're at for student registration for electives for next year, because we have some exciting opportunities that are going to become available for 7th and 8th graders. Mrs. LeBeau?
So in front of you and on the screens, you will see the results, the work that our elective options committee took on. Seventh grade is the one that's only viewing now. So children will have a choice. And because everything is a year long and children get 2 electives, they can choose 2 of everything here. One is the gold wheel, the maroon wheel, band year long, choir year long, orchestra year long, French 1A, which is a half a year and earns a half a credit. It's a full year class, but half a year of content. Spanish 1A, very robust curriculum, also half a credit for high school. In the gold wheel, computer science, life skills, where financial literacy toward our Gallup poll will be addressed, art and wellness. In the maroon wheel, art, exploratory language, life skills, and wellness. Then we have our 8th grade option, and that gets a little different. So we have semester classes. Children can choose.
Mrs. LeBeau, before you go to 8th grade, can I just ask you, can you explain, because it's on the reverse of their sheet,
Yep.
in the wheels, what the difference in content is? Will a student be repeating? So if I was a student, I could technically take both wheels. I could choose option 1 and option 2, but because art is in both, art will not be the same content in both wheels. So it's on the reverse as far as your description, but you technically, as a student, you pick 2 of the 7 choices, and it could very well mean you pick both wheels. But although it looks like art is in both, it is not the same content or experience. Can you talk?
Kind of wellness in both experiences.
Right. So you do have descriptions on the back of that sheet if you'd like to know the content, but the
Neither
teachers
is life skills.
have worked with Mrs. LeBeau to structure those with Dr. Hamilton to have a different experience. But there are different contents available in all of those disciplines.
So if I, one of my choices was the maroon wheel, I probably wouldn't take French or Spanish, correct? Or I could?
You could, you get 2.
That would be up to you.
Oh, okay.
It wouldn't make sense because the maroon wheel has exploratory language.
Right,
But you could take the gold wheel and then take French.
okay.
Or you could take the gold and maroon and have 2 different experiences in art and in physical education and in life skills.
Okay, thanks.
Other questions about the differences? And that difference is important when you look at our 8th grade options. So we have full year class options, those are in the B column, and then semester class options in the A column. You'll see physical education and wellness. The difference is physical education is for that quarter credit, high school, toward high school graduation. And it is strictly physical education. Wellness, it incorporates physical education as well as the opportunity to get decision-making, nutrition, some of those, what we consider health topics, as well as the physical movement. Computer science is in as a semester class, art is a semester class, and that art is different from what we offer in 7th grade and either wheel. And then again, life skills, which is also different from what we offer in 7th grade. In our full year classes, children can choose none of these full year classes or 1 or 2. French 1, French 1B, those are for children who have currently in 7th grade are taking French 1A to complete their credit. They'll take 1B. Spanish 1, Spanish 1B, again, completing that credit, band, choir, or orchestra. So our rollout for parents, I have currently 3 evening options. And when I sent my email on Monday to parents, I asked if there was enough interest, I would be happy to do a day session. And I had about 30 parents respond. So we are adding a daytime option to talk with parents about these options and scheduling. We go January 24th in the evening We, January 26th in the evening, Tuesday, Thursday, February 1st, which is a Wednesday, and then parents don't know this yet, but on February 1st, we're going to go at 9:45. I tried to schedule that so that if you had an elementary kiddo and you needed to do drop-off and then come over, you had enough time and wouldn't be rushing. But we did have about 30 parents email me and say, hey, daytime really works. Parents can come at whatever session meets their needs. I want to make sure that it's a small enough session that we get to talk so that I can explain everything, so there is absolutely. Then we will go into study centers and talk with kiddos, and we will do paper pencil registration that we will retain. We will also ask for parent signatures. Questions for me?
Boy.
So I want to thank Mrs. LeBeau and Dr. Hamilton, the entire middle school electives committee, and for quite honestly, a completely different experience and process compared to where we were in the past. So we've taken all of the feedback, we listened, we were very deliberate in putting a process in place, and I think people will be very pleased with the work that both Mrs. LeBeau and Dr. Hamilton are leading to do student registration for grades 7 and 8. 6th grade, historically part of middle school, will not register for middle school because of the recommendation for reconfiguration. We will host parent and student meetings specifically with 5th grade to talk about all of the intricacies of what is possible in 6th grade, including specials, once I know the start and end time outcome. So we're preparing a letter through Mr. Emery and Mrs. Nowak to share with families to explain there's no expectation that current 5th graders would participate in the middle school registration meetings given the reconfiguration.
The only question I guess I would, just thinking about it, is there a possibility that based on the number of students choosing a certain class that you could get locked out? Or are there going to be enough? I mean, it seems like there's enough choice that people will have flexibility.
There's always that possibility. We are going to ask parents and children to choose first option, second option, third option, fourth option, fifth option. In the event that there's too much, or the reverse of that is that we don't have enough children for a specific wheel.
Right. And in fairness, on the back of the sheets of the graphic, you'll see the disclaimer that I asked to be added specifically because it goes back to our point about using our existing resources wisely, that if it's undersubscribed, that cannot justify the section, it will be canceled. It's no different than what happens for high school registration. There has to be a sufficient number of students that demonstrate interest to justify the staffing level associated to it. If not, you will be required to make a new choice.
This is exciting.
Yeah, very much.
It's
All good
wonderful.
stuff.
It's
Thank
terrific.
you.
Thank you, Mrs. LeBeau, Dr. Hamilton.
This has been a pretty good 90 minutes.
I
Yeah.
got a lot done. I
Yeah.
have 2 more things I'd like to say, if I may.
Yes, sir.
So I'd like to congratulate the orchestral program within the school district and the Electrify Your Strings concert that was held this past Monday evening. It was absolutely incredible. If you haven't seen the YouTube videos, the social media posts, the Instagram videos, I would highly recommend it. I will tell you, in my 26 years in public education, it's the best orchestra concert I've ever been to. It was absolutely incredible. So we're working with the McCoy board because I met with them this morning. I'm already after my funding for the future because they were sponsor of the concert to bring Mark Wood in. And I actually publicly want to really just say for our families, because if you weren't at the concert, you would not know. But Mark Wood, who is one of the co-founders of the Trans-Siberian Orchestra, was on his plane to fly from New York City to Columbus at JFK. The flight was canceled. He left, could not get a flight out of LaGuardia, and drove 10 hours to get here for that clinic for the kids. So he got in a car for that commitment to come work with our kids, which says a lot about Mark Wood. So it was a class act. It truly was. It was incredible. Last 2 things. I'm sorry, there were 3. I apologize, President McClellan. Second, State of the Schools, just for informational purposes, it is Monday, January 23rd. Your board meeting, based upon the adoption of your calendar this evening, will be at 5:30 to permit State of the Schools at 6:30, so you can be in attendance for the academic and financial address for the State of the School District. So we are publicly advertising. I strongly encourage families to come to learn more about academics and finances of our school district. Ms. Jenkins and I are planning a robust presentation. Lastly, January is School Board Recognition Month, and I'd like to publicly thank our Board of Education for your service. This is your honorary month. You get January, so congratulations and thank you for all the service you provide to our community as the elected officials of the New Albany Plain Local Schools. We appreciate everything that you do for us and, more importantly, for our children. Thank you, Mr.
All right.
McClellan, for
Moving on.
indulging me.
And that's it.
Yes. We are at our next public participation, and we will move on from there to superintendent items, A1 through 6. Superintendent Sawyers.
Yes. Thank you, President McClellan. You have action items this evening for personnel to recognize recognition or contract actions for hire for employment purposes within our school district. I would ask for your support in approving these items.
Could I have any questions? Can I have a motion for approving?
So moved.
A second.
Second.
That was Mr. Darrow and Ms. Kalinowski. A roll call, please.
Mr. Darrow?
Yes.
Ms. Kalinowski?
Yes.
Mr. Newmoff?
Yes.
Ms. Kohler?
Yes.
President McClelland?
Yes. And that brings us just about to the end. We are going to have an executive session this evening, so I need to get a motion to enter an executive session as permitted by section 121.22G4 of the Ohio Revised Code to prepare for negotiations or bargaining sessions with public employees concerning their compensation or other terms and conditions of their employment. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Mr. Newmoff and Ms. Kalinowski, a second. A roll call, please.
Mr. Newmoff?
Yes.
Ms. Kalinowski?
Yes.
Mr. Darrow?
Yes.
Ms. Kohler?
Yes.
President McClelland?
Yes, and there is not expected to be any action that we take out of there, but we thank everyone for coming and watching. And, well, stay warm out there. I guess it's going to get cold tonight, right? So no more 2-hour delays, though, okay? Thank you.
Thank you.
Can't promise anything.